Now let us look at the typical structures of the technical writing. As a research student, there are two main types of technical writing, which are the journal papers and the thesis or dissertation. The slide here shows the typical structures of the journal papers and the thesis or dissertation. Of course, this is subjected to the submissions guideline of the respective journals or the thesis. Even with the variations, the main thing should be more or less there. Now let us look at these typical structures of a journal paper. It basically consists of three main parts, which are the beginning, the body, and the closure. There will be three main sections at the beginning. This includes the title, the abstract, and the introduction. As for the body part, there will be methodology, result, and discussions. As for the closure part, you will see the conclusions, the future works or recommendations, and references. In fact, for the thesis and dissertation, also having the similar structures and sequence, only that the breakdown is more refined as compared to the journal paper. You know that the purpose of academic journal is to facilitate scholarly communication. Normally, they have a limited number of pages, somewhere between 8 to 16 pages, depending on the journal papers. Imagine that you have to put everything of your research from the start to the end clearly presented within that 8 to 16 pages. The writing will be very optimized, very concise, and only constitute the essential parts of your research, which at the same time, the quality of the informations are not to be compromised. The relevant technical specifications will need to be adequately provided. Because of this, the structures of the journal papers is not as refined as the thesis, which you are allowed to present your thesis in the range of 100 to 300 pages. Of course, the writing style will vary slightly between the journals and the thesis. The common thing it will be both of these type of publication are technical writing, written in the formal manner, presenting a good concentrations of information without compromising the quality of the information, particularly in terms of the technical specifications. Due to the limited numbers of pages for the journal paper, the focus it will be the essential things. As for the thesis, the focus it will be the details, as well as the various aspects covered by the thesis. This will be reflected in terms of the structure of the thesis, which follow the typical sequence here, starting from the title, abstract, introductions, literature review, methodology, result and analysis, conclusions, and references. If you compare the structures in the thesis and the journal, you will observe they are following a certain sequence, and most of the journals papers and the thesis are doing the similar sequence. Only that when you talk about the introduction, it will be structured in a more systematic manner, section by section, with adequate explanations and details. This includes the background of study, problem statement, objective, scope of study, and significance of study. Some may put an additional section here behind the significance of study, the outline of the thesis, stating the focus of different chapters of the thesis. There will be a dedicated sections for the literature review, which is in the chapter 2. It is not saying that journals papers do not have literature review. Their literature review is incorporated in the introductions, being discussed together with the background of the study, problem statements, objectives, as well as the purpose of the study. In fact, all these elements in the thesis should theoretically, briefly, and concisely delivered in the introduction, only in the manner that the fewest numbers of words as possible. This can be separated in paragraphs. Some might combine them together in one paragraph, depending how the author address it. You will need to do a good literature review to establish the fundamental concepts and principles governing the topics that you are studying. There should be a review and analysis of the papers and publications, a good summary of the findings of the previous researcher, some critical inputs out of the review. You might need to highlight the research gap that you are addressing, and etc. Next, in the chapter 3, it will be the methodology. This is where you provide explanations and the details of the materials that you used, particularly for the fabrications of your specimens. There will be explanations on the methods that you use to conduct the research. If you are conducting the experiments, you need to provide information of the tools, instruments, and equipment that you use for the experiment. If you are doing the computer modeling, you need to clearly specify the software and the programs that you use, different programs for different purposes, and you might need to outline the assumptions or the specifications of the materials that you use in your computer modeling with proper justifications. You will need to provide details of the test program that you have conducted for your research study. Bear in mind that all the details and informations provided in this chapter, methodology, it is meant for the researchers to understand and have the capability to adopt or to replicate your testing in their future research. Therefore, everything needs to be given clearly without intentionally leaving out some important things that jeopardize the research study. The next chapter, it will be the result and analysis. You will need to present your data and result, going through a series of analysis. You need to demonstrate your analysis in this chapter to prove the outcomes of your research. And then there will be discussions. You can discuss the result, your interpretations, your findings, your observations, and probably your predictions. You will have to look into details regarding the result, study in depth, consider various aspects, backing up your findings and opinions with good evidence, which can either be obtained from your experiments or obtained by the previous researchers. The ultimate goal here is to understand the subjects that you are studying as a contributions to the knowledge in the field. We will expect in-depth discussions in this section, and each statement needs to be carefully made in order not to confuse other people and to increase the credibility of your findings. Some people may have several chapters for the result and analysis, separating different stages of their research. For example, the preliminary study in one chapter, the parametric study in another chapter, and the analytical study in another chapter. This is dependent on the needs and the amount of information that you can produce in your thesis and dissertation. Then the final chapter will be the conclusion. It basically comprises of three main elements. There will be the summary of your thesis, the conclusion drawn from your research study, and the recommendations for future studies. Bear in mind that the conclusions needs to be answering the objective stated in the introduction. It is recommended that you structure your conclusions as per the sequence of your objectives of your thesis. Lastly, there will be the references. You will need to list all the details of the publications that you use in your thesis, cited in your thesis. Now that you know the typical structures of the journals, papers, and thesis or dissertation, you know the essential parts of these two types of technical writings are similar. Only one of them focuses on all the essential things. Another one of them, which is the thesis, focuses more on the details and various aspects involved in the research study. Probably you can think of this way. For you to acquire the cutting-edge idea, or for you to acquire the essential concepts and critical informations, you may refer to the journal paper. It is relatively short. The concentrations of the information is extremely high. You will be able to get most out of the journal's papers within a short durations of time. However, if you need to know the details beyond the information given in the journal's paper, and you would like to know more other minor aspects also governing the research finding, or you want to step-by-step replicate or adopt the research methodology, or you are looking for more detailed literature review, especially to observe how they do the literature review, and also what are their findings and evaluations of those literatures, or you would like to know in more detail regarding the steps for the analysis, probably thesis can provide you more detailed information. I am not saying that which one is better than the other one, as the purposes of these two publications are slightly different. Although both of them are meant for the scholarly communication, the thesis have another additional function. It is also for the academicians to evaluate the quality of the research carried out by a postgraduate student, in the process of determining whether to award them a PhD or a master's degree. Therefore, theoretically, the evaluations of a person acquiring the PhD and master shall be dependent on the quality of your thesis and dissertation, as it provides more details covering a broader aspects. This allows the supervisor and the examiner to evaluate all different aspects of the research study conducted by the postgraduate student.